Welcome to episode 519 of AI Brief. I'm Amin, and I'm here with my co-host Leah for another deep dive. And today's topics are really going to challenge how you think about your career.
Oh, absolutely. The anxiety out there is real.
It is. We are unpacking some highly counterintuitive advice from Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang on what skills are actually AI-proof. And then we're looking at the dark side of that coin, a massive Stanford study showing how AI hiring tools are quietly causing a cascading wave of job rejections.
Plus, we've got the rapid-fire rundown of the market, which is just exploding right now.
Totally. Trillion-dollar hardware milestones, math-solving models, and finally, a masterclass on today's trending AI tools to turbocharge your productivity.
What I really love about this specific lineup is just the stark contrast. On one hand, you have this high-level philosophical view of our AI future from the executive suite, and on the other,
A brutal reality on the ground.
exactly, the very real reality of how algorithms are actively reshaping the market and who actually gets hired today.
Let's jump straight into that tension.
Yeah.
So, Jensen Huang recently spoke with CNA, and he pushed back incredibly hard against this whole panic over finding an AI-proof subject for kids to study.
Which is what every parent is obsessing over right now.
Every single one. But his advice was basically to stop obsessing over the specific degree. He argues that instead of asking what job AI can't do, students need to ask, well, how can this technology elevate my craft?
That's an interesting pivot.
Right. And he used journalism as a really brilliant example. He said the absolute best journalists don't just sit there and ask a static list of questions.
Because, an AI can do that perfectly.
Exactly. An AI can generate 10 great questions in 2 seconds. But a great human journalist actually listens, they think about the response, and they adapt dynamically in the room. He also brought up this Japanese concept called wabi-sabi.
Oh, the aesthetic of imperfection.
You got it. It's the beauty of imperfection. He suggested that uniquely human qualities, our quirks, our weird tangents, the slightly imperfect but authentic viewpoints, those are going to become so much more prized.
That makes a lot of technical sense when you think about how large language models actually work.
How so? Break that down for us.
Well, at their core, these models are just massive probabilistic engines. They're aiming for the ultimate mathematical average of their training data.
So they always generate the most statistically likely response.
Precisely. They aim for the dead center of the bell curve. So when the entire internet is flooded with perfectly average, infinitely generated content,
Perfection just becomes a cheap commodity.
that's the point. The value shifts entirely to the delta. The gap between the machine's sterile average and our human imperfection, your specific taste, your lived experience. The machine can't predict it because it isn't statistically average.
I love the philosophy there. I really do. But I have to push back on Wang's comments.
Okay, let's hear it.
In that same interview, he called the narrative about AI taking jobs lazy. He said, AI has just arrived. How is it possible they're already losing jobs?
I see where you're going.
I mean, how can we call it lazy when we literally have data showing over 80,000 jobs have already been cut this year alone, explicitly in favor of AI restructuring?
Your pushback is completely validated. There is this really profound disconnect between the executive suite and, the factory floor of the knowledge economy.
Telling someone who just lost their job to a chatbot that the narrative is lazy, that doesn't pay the rent.
It definitely doesn't. When a CEO looks at this, they're seeing the macroeconomic horizon where historically tech creates more jobs than it destroys. But regardless of whether that CEO narrative is quote-unquote lazy or not, the immediate reality is that those cuts are happening today.
Which means you really have no choice but to adapt.
Which means workers really do have to lean into Huang's actual advice, even if his perspective is a bit detached. You have to focus obsessively on creativity, judgment, and your own taste to survive in this environment.
Since we're talking about surviving the job market, let's look at the AI gatekeepers who are actually deciding who gets hired.
This study is wild.
It's terrifying. So there's a new Stanford study that analyzed 4 million job applications across 156 employers. All of these employers were using automated hiring data from a vendor called Pymetrics.
And the researchers found some pretty undeniable racial disparities, didn't they?
Very clear disparities. They found a 10.62% adverse impact against Black applicants and a 5.32% adverse impact against Asian applicants.
Wow. So the algorithms are just mathematically screening out these demographics before a human even glances at the resume.
But the truly scary part isn't just the bias. It's the architecture. I call it the shared infrastructural problem. Across those 156 massive companies, There aren't 156 different AI models.
Let me guess, they're all using the same backend.
Exactly. There are only 42 shared models across all of them. So a rejection at one company, mathematically, triggers a rejection at another company using the exact same infrastructure.
Wait, so it
It
cascades?
cascades. It's literally like bombing one interview, and as you walk out the door, you realize you've been magically blacklisted by 10 other companies you haven't even applied to yet.
That is incredibly dystopian.
The data showed that 4% of applicants who applied to 10 positions were rejected from all of them, universally.
Which perfectly illustrates the hidden dangers of this shared infrastructure. Now, we should add some context here. This data is from 2018 to 2022.
Ah, so pre-ChatGPT.
Right. Modern large language models work differently than those older predictive models, but the underlying vulnerability is exactly the same.
Because the centralization is the same.
Precisely. If a major vendor's modern LLM system has a blind spot, dozens of companies get hit with that exact same bias simultaneously, and they probably never even realize it. You're no longer facing diverse human flaws. You're facing a monolithic algorithmic monoculture.
Facing one algorithm 10 times over. That is a grim thought for anyone job hunting right now. But the market is moving incredibly fast, and so is the tech. So let's pivot to everything else in AI today. I'm going to hand the floor over to you to lead the rundown.
Let's get into it. I want to start with the physical infrastructure because the hardware demand is just insatiable. This week, U.S. chipmaker Micron and South Korea's SK Hynix both crossed the $1 trillion market cap.
$1 trillion for memory chips. I get why Nvidia is booming with GPUs, but why is memory suddenly worth $1 trillion?
It's all about context windows. When you feed an AI a massive data set, it has to hold all of that in its short-term memory. And as models get more complex, those context windows are just exploding. They need vast amounts of high bandwidth memory.
Oh, so the memory handles the immediate thinking space.
Exactly. In fact, the Roundhill Memory ETF, which is focused on DRAM chips, just became the fastest ETF in history to reach $10 billion in assets.
The infrastructure boom just will not slow down?
Yeah, it won't. And moving from hardware to trading tech, Liquid just launched an app called Co-Invest. This is an app that lets you source investment ideas, get Wall Street level analysis, and execute trades directly inside ChatGPT or Claude.
Okay, I have to jump in here with a massive warning for everyone listening.
Please do.
Combining a hyper-confident AI model with your live bank account is incredibly dangerous. These tools carry real risk. They hallucinate. They can confidently misread financial data that doesn't exist. So please, consult a qualified financial advisor before making trades based on an AI's advice.
A very necessary disclaimer, a hallucination could cost you your savings.
Seriously.
What else is
The radar.
Well, there's a fascinating culture shift happening with developers. The Ship or Die app just launched. It's basically a pirate-themed paid community that forces you to publicly launch your project in 30 days. If you don't, you get marked overboard in a public hall of shame.
30 days to launch a full app? That's insane pressure.
It is, but it coincides with this massive boom in what people are calling vibe coding.
Vibe code.
Yes, vibe coding. It's writing software using natural language prompts instead of typing out syntax. You just describe the vibe and function in plain English. To show you the scale of this, Google AI Studio reported that users built 250,000 Android apps in a single week.
250,000 apps.
Right.
In 1 week.
That's the new speed of creation. Meanwhile, on the research front, Anthropic's Sholto Douglas announced that their model Mythos just solved Erda's problem number 90.
I vaguely know Erda's problems are legendary in math. Did OpenAI tackle that recently?
They did, which was a huge milestone. But what's significant here is that Anthropic's model solved it with a simpler, more elegant proof than OpenAI's attempt.
Why does a simpler proof matter for AI?
Because if a machine solves something using a billion brute force steps, humans can't learn from it. It's a black box. A simpler proof means the AI is actually reasoning in a way that we can comprehend and verify.
That's a massive leap in genuine reasoning, not just processing power.
It is. And geopolitically, the stakes for that kind of reasoning are getting intense. Bloomberg is reporting that China is now restricting overseas travel for their top AI researchers from labs like Alibaba and DeepSeek.
Wow. To prevent a brain drain.
Basically, yes. They are trying to physically keep their top talent in the country to catch up with U.S. capabilities.
Physical travel bans for computer scientists, that is wild.
It really highlights the national security angle. Finally, on the commercial side, API pricing is plummeting. Xiaomi permanently slashed its MIMO v2.5 API pricing by 99%. and they boosted token allowances by 5 to 8 times.
A 99% price cut is aggressive.
Very. In the audio space, 11 Labs released Music V2, which has better vocals, multilingual support, and track-level in-painting.
Meaning you can go in and just fix a drum track without regenerating the whole song?
Exactly. Granular control. And wrapping up the rundown, OpenRouter just raised $113 million. They are now hitting a run rate of 1.5 quadrillion tokens annually across 8 million developers.
I need to pause on that scale. A 1.5 quadrillion token run rate.
Yeah.
When you have that kind of volume flowing through a single pipeline, it completely explains that vibe coding boom you mentioned earlier.
It's the engine behind the 250,000 apps.
Right. Frictionless creation. Which actually leads us perfectly into our final section today. We want to walk you through today's trending AI tools and, more importantly, how to actually use them in a practical workflow.
Let's make this actionable.
So imagine you're starting a company today. You have a raw idea. First, use a tool called Replifine. It's for UI conceptualization. You take a messy sketch of an app interface, feed it to Replifine, and it turns it directly into pixel-perfect code.
Or if you want to skip the code completely, you just use Pave.
Exactly. Pave lets you describe your app and deploys it with no code whatsoever. The use case there is skipping prototype purgatory and going straight to live functioning software.
But if you are doing complex coding, you'd want something like Claude Code, right?
Spot on. Claude Code is Anthropic's coding agent, and what's trending about it is its built-in security guidance plugin. When you're vibe coding an app in a weekend, you aren't checking for security flaws. This agent acts as a guardrail to keep your code base safe.
Which is incredibly necessary if you're building fast.
Very.
Yeah.
Now, once your app is built, you need to feed it data. That's where Parts 2.0 comes in. It's a document parsing API. You feed it massive, complex enterprise documents, and it structures them so your AI agents can read them perfectly.
So no messy formatting errors breaking the bot.
Precisely. Next, you need marketing. For that, you turn to Pika and Luva. Pika is dominating text-to-video for turning quick text ideas into highly realistic, short video clips.
Perfect for social media.
Right. And Luva's taking a different angle. It generates high-end, cinematic videos effortlessly, which is great for polished brand storytelling.
And what about actually running the business operations?
This is where it gets crazy. Perplexity has a cloud-based agent called Computer. People are using it to fully automate the management of their Shopify e-commerce stores. It's literally a digital store manager.
That is mind-blowing.
And as you scale, you use Select Prism. These are AI hiring agents that speed up the screening and interviewing process. Though, keeping our earlier chat in mind, if you use this, please keep an eye out for that shared infrastructure bias.
Definitely keep a human in the loop there.
For sure. And finally, to monitor all these automated employees, you use Voker. It's an agent analytics platform that optimizes the performance of your AI workforce.
Looking at this entire list, from Pave to Replifine, there is such a clear practical angle here.
What's the theme you're seeing?
Almost every single tool on this list is entirely focused on instantly collapsing the distance between having a raw idea and having a finished, deployed product. The execution is no longer the bottleneck.
Which brings us to a really provocative thought to leave you with today. With tools like Select Prism interviewing candidates and agents like Perplexity's Computer managing the retail stores.
It really makes you wonder.
It does. How long until our economy is literally just AI agents pitching, hiring, and selling software to other AI agents?
I completely agree. If the execution is automated, the entire B2B landscape might just become bots talking to bots.
A completely automated economy of trust. Fascinating stuff to chew on.
Oh.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive for today. Be sure to follow and share the podcast with your colleagues, and we will see you in the next episode.